A South Texas man who defended the United States at war is now fighting against his deportation to Mexico. Border reporter Oscar Margain is in Hidalgo tonight. He brings us the story of a veteran military couple whose family could be split apart as they navigate a complex immigration system.
It hurts, especially our kids, because they're used to him being there.
To leave no soldier behind is what Jennifer Garcia learned while serving in the Army. Little did she know that one day she would be fighting to save the father of her children, also an Army veteran, from being deported.
I have never once had any kind of issues or problems with him.
It's been a month to the day the last time Edgar Baltasar Garcia came home. The legal permanent resident was stopped at a port of entry in Hidalgo, Texas after a day trip across the border to visit his nephew. Customs agents pulled him over after pulling up his felony conviction record.
They called me and told me that he was being detained. He didn't do anything wrong.
He is now being held by Immigration and Customs Enforcement at the Port Isabel Detention Center, awaiting his immigration hearing.
You may have been convicted and completed your conviction for state purposes, but for federal immigration purposes, it's a completely different ballgame.
Carlos Garcia is representing the family. He says Edgar was sentenced last year to 6 months probation for an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon against a relative. He explains that even non-citizen veterans can be deported once they commit a crime, and many don't know they shouldn't leave the country.
What we're asking for is for immigration to release them so that he can fight his immigration case while he's not detained, and he can seek the appropriate psychological and medical needs that he was already receiving before he was detained.
Edgar suffers from PTSD and traumatic brain damage stemming from his deployment to Iraq in 2004. Edgar's mother, Amelia, says it's painful for her to see her son detained. She fears for his safety if deported to Mexico. ICE would not say if Edgar will be released on bond. ICE makes determinations of release on a case-by-case basis and exercises discretion when it comes to military veterans.
Don't deport him. He served our country. I mean, there's a lot of other veterans that are being in the same position. They've been deported.
Edgar's first hearing is set for March 6th before an immigration judge who will ultimately decide his fate. In Hidalgo, on the Texas-Mexico border, Oscar Margain reporting.